Your family has been very outspoken in support of Jack. He's Kaylee's ex-boyfriend. And on the Moscow police website, he is not listed, notably, as someone who has been cleared in the investigation. To your knowledge, is that significant?
No, I don't personally think so, because I think that there's the entire rest of the world that's also not on that list of people who have been cleared,
right?
Including Maddie's boyfriend, including any associates of Xana or Ethan that might not be involved. I don't find that significant at all.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. It's taken more than 40 days, but we're finally getting more on the inside track in terms of Jack, Kaylee's childhood sweetheart. It's interesting that the New York Post refers to Jack in its opening paragraph as Kaylee's ex. Is that accurate? I think the question many have been asking is whether the status was actually the other way around. He was Kaylee's ex. Kaylee had broken up with him. In fact, Kaylee had broken things off with Jack just 3 weeks before the incident. And so you have to wonder, what has Jack been thinking about while he's looking at the food truck footage? Imagine if you were him, what would you think? Or the CCTV close to the corner club.
What did you say to Adam? I told him.
Wherever Jack is, watching these body cams of the noise complaints, and I'm sure he is, what is he thinking about that? What was he thinking about at the time? And I mean, think about who is missing from all of these snippets of his girlfriend's life. Where was he, and what does he think now, looking at footage of his girlfriend partying, apparently with other guys and apparently without him? I mean, I've got to say, I was thinking about this anyway, without really knowing the status, which has sort of come out now. So what we're finding out now seems to be different to what Kaylee's parents said, that they were going to get back together and they were going to get married. It seems as though, I mean, if that was part of the plan, then this activity, was that really a great plan? You know, like this activity, and you are going to get back together and have kids.
What's the plan?
Not a great plan.
Now, according to Brooke Miller, Jack's aunt, right now Jack is heartbroken, and apparently too heartbroken to talk to the media himself, and I suppose you could even say too heartbroken to actually assist directly with the investigation into what happened to the love of his life. She said, quote, "He's not only lost the love of his life and what we all thought, and he probably thought as well, would be his future wife, you know, get married and have kids and all of that, but also half of America thinks he could be responsible for the heinous killings." That's according to Miller, end quote. So this is confirmation of what Kaylee's folks said. Now, is it just me, or does it seem as if maybe that wasn't going to happen after all? Or did Kaylee intend to bring Jack back out of the friend zone? Now, what's really interesting about this article from the New York Post, and I will put a link to it in the description, is that we found out a little bit more about what has been going on, what Jack's studying, and how long they had been dating. But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So the article goes on to say Ducour, 22, and Goncalves, 21, had been dating for 5 years, so since 2017, when she broke things off with him, just 3 weeks before she was killed. That's pretty significant. I was under the impression they'd been taking a break for most of the year, but this is actually something recent, something that started in the last week of October. It also shows that at the very end, it was Kaylee's plan to travel to Europe, go backpacking, and head to Texas without him. We've been speculating about that, but now that's definitely been confirmed. It also sketches a situation where Jack was likely trying to hang on or hold on to the relationship through the rigors of parties and pretenders trying to get his girl. You know, you kind of get the idea that he was trying to stay in the relationship, keep the relationship going right through the entire year, and then right at the end, the wheels came off. And then I think once again we've got to look at this statement from Kaylee in her very last Instagram. One lucky girl to be surrounded by these people every day. Who wouldn't be surrounded by them? Who wasn't surrounded by them every day, certainly in the last 3 weeks? Now imagine reading that 3 weeks after you've been ditched by the love of your life, by your wife, essentially. Jack's last appearance on Kaylee's Instagram was as long ago as September 19. And you actually see a radical transformation in Kaylee. One actually has a sense, like Gabby Petito, of Kaylee rapidly coming into her own. Compare the dark-haired, wholesome girl next door Jack had gotten to know since 2017. This picture, these pictures, to the blonde femme fatale circa the summer and fall of 2022. Do you have the same situation here as in the Gabby Petito case? The girl in the story, the young woman in the story, blossoming, becoming herself, achieving kind of a sexual agency, becoming beautiful. Meanwhile, the guy that she's with, in comparison, is not really changing very much, which essentially means he ends up feeling emasculated. 4 weeks prior to the murders and 1 week prior to their official breakup, Kaylee posted another Instagram besides the last one saying, "Love these people." And then there were a series of individuals in those photos. Well, who was missing from that on October 16? How did Jack feel about being kicked to the curb when everyone was celebrating being so happy? According to his aunt, Brooke, quote, obviously was sad, but they were still friends. His aunt also said that Goncalves was planning on moving away and that their split was amiable. Well, it wasn't so amiable on the morning of November 13th, because we know that in the hours before their deaths, Goncalves and Mogan tried to call Duquois a total of 10 times, and then he didn't answer. Those 10 calls and texts suggest Jack wasn't a happy camper, not nearly. I don't know if it really was so amiable, and even Maddie knew that. According to the New York Post, quote, police in Moscow, Idaho later said they'd looked into and cleared the phone calls, and on November 23rd declared that Duquois was no longer considered a suspect. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. But you notice November 23rd is really 10 days later. It's quite a long time to take to clear someone. Their statement was that detectives do not believe the male Kaylee and Madison attempted to contact numerous times on November 13th is involved in this crime. And this is what police wrote on Facebook. I think it's a mistake to see Jack as the only possible suspect. In a scenario where Kaylee recently broke up with Jack, it's possible there was a contest for Kaylee's affections, and perhaps someone else, someone like Hoodie Guy, but others too, got ditched along the way as well. That's also possible. One has the impression that by the end of 2022, Kaylee and Maddie's world at the University of Idaho was their oyster, and at the center of it was the Pearl, the fun house. And they were exerting a lot of power from that sort of vantage point, from those balconies, and possibly those bedrooms as well. And there they had the boys wrapped around their pinkies. They were available, evidently, and accessible, possibly. But wasn't it a case of not you, you, or you, but not you? We've also found out some important new information about Jack's context, that he was majoring in mechanical engineering at the university, and at least according to the article, was initially considered a person of interest in the November 13 quadruple homicide. But what do his studies tell us about the likely dynamics? So a friend of mine, as well as my brother, both studied electromechanical engineering. That's pretty hardcore. That's not the sort of degree you can do and party 4 or 5 times a week. So you kind of get the idea Jack must have worked quite hard and been, studying the way most people do at university, and he couldn't have attended all of these parties. And so while he's working very hard they're having fun. How did that feel? The New York Post then highlights a YouTube video posted by someone called The Reporter Room. I have actually seen that particular video, and she sort of points out the quote-unquote red flags in regards to the case, and seems to try and sort of make the connection quite explicitly that Jack must be the perpetrator. Because, for example, the dog they bought as a couple didn't alert an intruder and was not harmed. I mean, that is something that has come up more than once, not just with this particular creator, but others as well. I do think Jack giving Kaylee a dog was quite an important gesture, intended to nudge her towards some sort of commitment. The dog may also have been intended as a sort of reminder to visitors that the dog and someone else belonged to Kaylee. The fact that the custody of the dog came up in the final text, in the final hours, maybe even the final minutes of her life, I think that is significant and shows that tensions were percolating because of Kaylee's imminent departure. Going back to the article, quote, after mentioning Goncalves' plan to relocate, Davies said, "We all know the most dangerous time for a woman is when she's trying to leave." That's the view of the creator, but then Jack's aunt responds by saying, these are just the most ridiculous conspiracies. So we also know that Jack is a talented tennis player. Besides that, Kaylee's mother, father, and sister, I'm not sure if it should be brother, but have publicly stated their support for Jack since her death. And the aunt as well. The aunt says, we all know beyond a shadow of doubt that there's no way that Jack would ever do anything like that to anybody. I've got to say, I had questions about Jack not graduating the same year as Kaylee. So, if Kaylee was leaving, was Jack going with her? Well, how could he if he hadn't completed his studies? And now we've got confirmation that he hadn't, right? Jack would have to stay behind in 2023 no matter what, while Kaylee sailed off into the sunset. And so what about Jack returning to the university? According to the article, he's struggling at the thought of returning to the university. His aunt says, quote, it's hard for him to think about going back to Moscow because his life there was very involved with Kaylees. Now, there are a few arguments for why Jack might be a good suspect, and I think many have dealt with those. But I think if we think critically, we must also acknowledge a few reasons why he may not be such a good suspect. Number one, it's too obvious. If Jack was the killer and it's so clear and so obvious, why hasn't he been arrested and charged already? Also, if Kaylee broke up with Jack 3 weeks prior, didn't he say anything about that? He must have said something somewhere to have elicited those 10 calls and texts in Kaylee and Maddie's final hours. Or was it actually something that was said to Adam that they thought would be told to Jack? On the other hand, in the Adnan Syed case, there's also a theory that someone couldn't get over a breakup. Number two, it doesn't make sense. Would the killer really commit murder and then walk back to his home right inside the student neighborhood? There's a saying that applies here. You don't SHIT where you eat, right? Number three, how does the Hyundai Elantra fit in? If someone lived a 20-second walk from the funhouse, why drive there? And why is this vehicle on the Ali's radar in the first place? Now, I have seen that Barstool Sports video, and I have seen the vehicle that is supposed to be a white vehicle below that. The window doesn't fit the same configuration of an Elantra, so I wish people would stop bringing that one up. Number four, Jack was sleeping. As far as we know, Jack has an alibi, and besides that, doesn't seem to be part of the events that unfolded that night, either at the corner club or anywhere else. That does raise the question, what was Jack doing on Saturday night before he was sleeping? Number five, the cops have cleared Jack. Also, there is no evidence Jack was interested in knives or hunting, certainly based on his social media, unless he scrubbed it. Now, if he does have an alibi, is his alibi Adam? If his alibi is Adam and Adam was a bartender, would Adam only have come home really late? Anyway, a month ago, Kaylee's father acknowledged that the cops believe the attack was targeted, that one person was the target.
Do you know if police believe one person in the house was the target of this attack, or all four?
I've been told it's one, but then again, there's the vagueness. Like, it's like purposely vague. We just want some more. We all want to play a part in helping, and we can't play a part if we don't have any real substantial information.
Has anyone indicated to you that if it was indeed one person targeted, was Kaylee the target? Has anybody shared that with you?
They won't confirm who that was to us.
If it was targeted, if there was one person that was the target, and if Kaylee was that target, I mean, that's the question that has haunted this investigation all along, whether or not Kaylee was the target. Now, do you agree if Kaylee was the target, I think that elevates Jack as someone you might want to look at. But if she wasn't the target, Jack then drops down the list of potential suspects. Interestingly, initially Jack was not expressly cleared when CNN interviewed the Goncalves family, and I've played that link at the beginning of this clip that demonstrates that. And then when asked if they thought this was significant, Kaylee's mom said she was certain that it wasn't. That she thought she was certain that it wasn't significant that he hadn't been expressly cleared on the Moscow PD website. But then at that same moment that she said that, Kaylee's brother nodded in response, suggesting that he thought it was significant. Well, was it? Is it? I guess time will tell. So I'm not going to take it any further than that. I think you will agree that we're getting a lot more clarity gradually. Things are sort of crystallizing and becoming clearer, the true dynamics surrounding this case. And as that happens, I think we are edging closer to figuring out what happened, why, and more specifically, who did this. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.